Welcome to Rally the Cause, a podcast where we learn from top leaders and marketing experts in the nonprofit world. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, everyone. This is Jeff Rum. I'm the host of the Ignite podcast, where I talk to top leaders of nonprofits about their journeys. I have Dr. Jeremy Wise here of Rise 25. He's done thousands of interviews with successful CEOs, and we've flipped the script, and he's going to be interviewing me today.
Jeff, I'm excited because we were chatting before we hit record here, and it's kind of doomsday versus inspiring. And so we're going to talk about the differences in messaging. And you guys over at Ignite are masters at messaging and helping people tell their story. So before we dive deep into it, I've heard a lot about different diseases, and this one I had never heard of before. It's a rare disease, so we'll talk about it. But this episode is brought to you by Ignite, and Ignite is a full-service agency focused on branding, campaigns, and digital marketing for nonprofits and mission-driven organizations. And Jeff, I know you make a huge impact on organizations with the work you do. At Ignite, you're strategists and storytellers at heart. And you partner with nonprofits that have big ideas and bold visions. And ultimately, what you do is you help nonprofits raise money and mobilize their audience. And you have a big, hairy, audacious goal, which some of the organizations you work with, I don't know how big and hairy it is. You're going to have to maybe increase it. But it's to raise $100 million and mobilize 1 million people in the next 5 years. If you have questions, if you know of an organization that can use the help of their team, go to igniteaction.co or email jeff@igniteaction.co to get in touch with them and their team. So Jeff, thanks for having me. And let's talk a little bit about the this organization and what it's about.
Yeah, sure. So we've worked for many years with the National Gaucher Foundation. It is an organization that helps support, and they're dedicated to serving patients in the United States who have Gaucher disease. Gaucher disease is a rare genetic disease, and the National Gaucher Foundation has been around for several decades and has been supporting the Gaucher community and their families for some time now.
So talk about messaging. When they first came to you, where did you start?
Yeah, so when they first came to us, the organization was going through some changes internally, and we really got to start from the ground up. And what I mean by that is that the National Gaucher Foundation had not really updated their brand since they were founded, and they were founded to basically find and create a treatment for the Gaucher disease, and they did. And so the organization needed to pivot instead of just being able to find a treatment for the disease, to actually help support the patients who have Gaucher disease through treatment, figuring out how to help them and their families, both with financial support, such as their care program, or giving them resources and tips on how to live with Gaucher disease. So the organization was going through a transition, and we were there to help them from the ground up, basically create a new brand, a new message, a new visual identity, and new content, and a new way of positioning the foundation. We did that by doing some initial research. We talked to patients, we talked to family members, we talked to physicians to understand the disease, to understand what they were going through, and how to best communicate with them. So that was one part. The other part is that the National Gaucher Foundation is also responsible for education and awareness about the disease, so that they can get people who are living with the disease out there but don't know it, get them diagnosed and get them treated as quickly as possible.
I want to talk about old versus new, but just to give people a sense, how does Gaucher disease affect people? And to let people know, it's spelled GAUCHER disease.org is the website. How does it affect people?
Yeah, good question. So the effects of Gaucher disease are really different from person to person. Some people have severe symptoms, and some people are by and large asymptomatic. So there's a range. But those who are most people who have Gaucher disease have some of the following symptoms. So it could be a swollen belly due to liver enlargement or spleen enlargement, bone pain. So a lot of Gaucher patients have like joint or bone pain, or easily fractured bones. Fatigue, bleeding, bruising problems. So there are a number of symptoms. And one of our jobs as marketers, as communicators, is to figure out how do we educate people around the disease. So if they are feeling some of these symptoms and they do fit the characteristics of Gaucher disease, that they go find a specialist and get diagnosed.
Yeah, that's the problem. If it's a rare disease, it can look like other things, and it probably goes undiagnosed for a while, I imagine.
Yeah, it does go undiagnosed. It is prevalent in the Ashkenazi Jewish community, although anyone can have Gaucher disease. It's not you don't have to be Jewish or have that background, but it is prevalent. So that is one population that we were able to create public awareness and education campaigns around the disease.
So talk about old messaging. You came in, they were kind of just doing a revamp. Give me an example of old versus new messaging. I mentioned doomsday versus inspiring a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, nothing against the old, but I think it was created at a time when there were unfortunately, people were suffering tremendously. There were deaths due to Gaucher disease because there was no treatment. Once there was treatment, then people had, and now there are multiple options for treatment. Different pharmaceutical companies have different treatments available. So what we wanted to do is go away from the kind of sad imagery, the dark colors, and we really brightened it up. And we wanted Gaucher patients to feel that, number one, NGF is a place they can go if they have questions, if they want support. And two, they can live a better today. They can actually live with Gaucher disease. They can exercise. They can have a quote unquote normal life. And if they follow a plan, if they find a specialist, if they do some of the things that are suggested, that they can really make the best of their lives and have a great future ahead of them. So part of it was repositioning it to be a more positive, forward-thinking, giving patients not just hope, but really education, resources, and the ability to live life and live life to its fullest.
Yeah, I want to talk about and have you walk us through, Jeff, a little bit about the methodology, because you start with, I like the deep dive with the patients, the physicians, the family members. So I want to know what you do next after you gather all this information. Before we move to the next, do any stories stick out to you from patients, family, or physicians that your team talked to?
I mean, the easiest one and probably the most special to NGF is its founder and president, Brian Berman, who as a child was diagnosed with Gaucher disease. And his parents were really scared. There's an incredible video on the website that has Brian talking about his story and you see photos of him as a child with his belly so big and swollen. And you can only just imagine what that's like as a child going in and out of the hospital trying to get treatment. And there was no treatment at that point. So his parents went to the NIH and really founded the NGF to try to understand this disease more. And ultimately, at the National Institutes of Health, they found they were able to develop a treatment. And Brian was the first person to get that treatment. And if you see him today, he has a beautiful family. with young kids, and he's an avid bike rider, and he still does his treatments, routinely. But he's, not only is he the president of the foundation, but he is, I think, a great symbol of what it means to live a better today.
At that time, I'm sure it was probably a death sentence for a lot of people.
Yeah, his parents were told that he was going to die. They were told that he probably won't live more than a few years, and they were, like many parents, just devastated. But that wasn't an okay answer for them. So they went and started the NGF. They worked with some physicians who were, specialists in rare disease. And luckily, they were able to create a treatment. Brian was able to get the treatment, and thousands of others have been able to get those treatments and live a life. And I think that's what's special about the NGF, is that history is still there. You still have a lot of the same people who were there from the beginning, but also they're open to change, and they know that that the organization needs to pivot and create different opportunities at this time, decades later.
Yeah, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Thank God the parents was like, decided not to take that as a death sentence for their son.
Yeah.
So you do a deep dive and you talk to and really understand the whole picture, not just from the patient's perspective, from the doctors and families. What do you do next?
So then we have to take all that we've learned, both from our qualitative research, which is like the interviews that we do, focus groups, and quantitative research, which includes survey data. We take that, we build out a strategy, we create a brand story that reflects the people that we're trying to help. And then we started to create a platform, a brand and messaging platform, which starts at a very high level of why the organization exists and what it wants to do and achieve in the world, all the way down to, okay, what are the channels that we're going to use to get the message out so that we can go to the people where they are and deliver content to them that's going to be useful, that's going to be educational, and that's going to help them. That's both for current patients, and what's more challenging is trying to reach those who are walking around in the world with these symptoms, but don't actually know that they have Gaucher disease.
Yeah, it's like it must be just such a revelation for people to finally get an answer, right? Because if you picture from the patient's perspective, they're probably going doctor to doctor. They're getting all different answers from different doctors who are great at what they do, but they just they're not specialists at this. And finally they find this is the answer, right? And so It must be amazing. So what were some of the channels that you saw people living in that you can create the awareness?
Yeah, so one of the first things we wanted to do is create a treatment center finder on the NGF website. And this allowed people who either somehow got to the site, they were Googling symptoms, which a lot of people do, for better or worse. We were able to build a website that was optimized. So we used a lot of the keywords for the treatments. For the symptoms. And we wanted to create a space where people could find Gaucher disease specialists, because there aren't a million Gaucher specialists out there. There are many, and they do exist around the country. But if you don't know where to go or how to find the right treatment center, oftentimes, like you said, you can go doctor to doctor. And we knew this from talking to patients and their families. So we wanted to create a one-stop shop where people can go locate the specialist and get diagnosed, because one of our goals as marketers is to find ways to get more people diagnosed and to reduce the diagnosis time. It was, I forget exactly what the number is, but we learned during the research that we did that it was taking many years from the time someone had symptoms to the time they were diagnosed with Gaucher disease. And one of the things that we knew we could do if we communicated to people in the right way is to try to reduce that diagnosis period. It's not an easy task. We're talking about a needle in a haystack, essentially, because there are people also walking around with a lot of these symptoms that don't have Gaucher disease, but we wanted to get as many people diagnosed as possible. So it went everywhere from directly targeting folks with Facebook advertising and content to developing videos using YouTube and other channels to get interesting video content out there about symptoms and what people might find, and then going to the communities where Gaucher disease is most prevalent, so at least we can kind of get the low-hanging fruit first and go out from there.
So it sounds like you help them with website, videos, paid search, SEO, anything that would get the word out. It's funny, I have a new tagline for your website, Jeff. It's ranking could be life or death. I mean, literally,
yeah.
In your situation, if you help optimize a site, it could mean they don't, they get the right diagnosis in 3 months as opposed to 3 years.
Yeah, I'll never forget. I got a call one night from Amy Blum, who's our contact, and she's the chief operating officer at NGF, an incredible leader and cares so deeply about this. She called me and said, "You're not going to believe this. Someone Google searched, found our website, contacted us. I forget, this family had like half a dozen children. They were all suffering from these symptoms, and they were out somewhere in the middle of the country where there weren't a lot of specialists. NGF was able to, through their care support system, get them to a specialist and get the diagnosis and treatment that they needed. And they had been living like this. One of them couldn't even walk anymore. And they were so grateful. And it started with a Google search. Like you said, it could be life or death. We don't really think about it in those terms. We really just try to focus on our goals and what we're trying to do. But yeah, I mean, it's some of the stories, and that's just one story. There are so many stories that with this particular organization that have really just meant so much to us. It does make us feel like we're committed to our mission, which is just making the world a better place.
Yeah, the tagline is too specific. So when ranking is life or death, it's more like getting, when you rally the troops is life or death. But it's an amazing thing to think about, because with information right now, people take their life and their health in their own hands with their research. And sometimes they're bringing the options to their healthcare professionals, before that, even if they don't have a specialist on hand. So yeah, it's super important.
The other thing I want to add is that we didn't do this alone, right? So we worked with the staff at the National Gaucher Foundation. We partnered with two other amazing partners of ours. One is AHA Media Group, and they specialize in healthcare content. And they have been working with NGF and with our team to make sure that the copy on the website is not only at the readability level of the users, but that we are also thinking about search and keywords. And they've just, they've done an incredible job of writing healthcare specific content, and that's their specialty. And also we worked with Tahina, which is an SEO, specific SEO company, another partner of ours that monitors and maintains the search engine optimization for NGF. And I think without those partners, we wouldn't be able to put all the pieces together for this particular client. So, one of the things we try to do is, we do the work, we know the work that we do really well, which is brand development, creating digital campaigns and marketing. But we also know when it's right to bring in other partners to help us, get to the next stage and lift the organization up. And I think together we've done an incredible job, of course, with the folks in NGF and the staff there. Yeah,
Jeff, thanks for sharing that. Everyone can check it out at GaucherDisease.org. Like I mentioned, GAUCHER disease. igniteaction.org. Also, you can check out igniteaction.co. But last question, Jeff, there are certain organizations that you kind of show as an example that you look at that do a really good job with brand stories and on their site. What was one that kind of sticks out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there are many. I love the, especially in this area that we're talking about today, I love the Michael J. Fox Foundation. I think they have done a great job with their messaging. Their website is very clear. And I think that they clearly know how to communicate and tell stories in a compelling way. So I would say that organization is one that we kind of shine a light on to say, how do we learn from them as a leader, both from a marketing communication standpoint, but also just as a company. They seem to really care a lot about the words that they put out and the way that they express themselves as a brand, which is not always easy to find in the nonprofit sector.
And then you mentioned the leadership. Who are some of the people behind it?
Yeah, so I don't know these people, but I admire the work that they do. But Todd Scherer he's a PhD, he's a bright guy. He's the CEO of the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and of course their co-founder, Deborah Brooks. She's also the executive vice chairwoman, if I'm remembering correctly. The leadership there obviously is top notch. They care a lot about what they do. I know that their CMO, Holly Teichholz, is leading their marketing efforts. I appreciate what she's doing. I always like to learn from other marketing professionals, especially within the nonprofit space, because we have to learn from the best and the brightest. And I think they're one of the ones out there that's doing a fantastic job.
Awesome.
It's good to see that.
Thanks for sharing that, Jeff. Check out more episodes of the podcast. Check out igniteaction.co, and we'll see you on more episodes. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to Rally the Cause podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.